Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Christiansen, and welcome to Splunk Tech Talks today. We're going to give everyone a couple of minutes here to be able to continue to join before we get started, but we'll be kicking things off in about 2 minutes. For those of you who just joined us, welcome to Splunk Tech Talks. We're going to be having an amazing security discussion today. We're going to have about 1 more minute here to allow some of the people to get connected, and then we'll be kicking things off here. All right. Thank you again for joining the Splunk Tech Talks. Today, we're going to be having a really good security discussion. But first, some of the things that we might have in here for content might have some forward-looking statements. Just wanted to be able to call that out to let you know if there's anything that you see or hear that might be, future-looking, that we're not, our intent is not to be able to give you any dates or timeframes that may or may not influence the sale in the future. So today we're going to be talking about how to be able to get more out of your security practice by using a SIEM. My name is Daniel Christiansen. I work at Splunk as a global security strategist. I've been at Splunk a little bit over 9 years now. Started off as a security sales engineer and then moved into the security strategist role that I have today. I have about 25 years experience in security, mixture of Fortune 500 as well as some federal government work that I've done for the past 12 years as well. So first I wanted to be able to kick things off with a little bit of a poll. So you should all see some poll answers on your screen. And the question today that we're going to be posing to you is, what are you most interested in learning about today? So feel free to choose, between A, B, C, or D. We're going to give a few minutes for people to be able to submit that, and then we'll review the results together. Give another minute here for everyone to be able to submit their responses. All right, let's see how we did here. So it looks like close to 60% of you how to be able to achieve security outcomes with a SIEM. So you're definitely in the right place, and we're going to be able to show you a bunch of great information today, and I'll even be walking you through a demo of enterprise security today to be able to show you how those benefits can be leveraged inside of a SIEM platform. So we have a nice agenda for you today. First, we're going to be focusing on a few different key areas of how to grow your security practice. So one, we're going to focus on initially why it's important to grow your security practice. How do you know if a SIEM is right for you? And then what are your options for bringing on a SIEM? So I know that can be a little bit of a complex question, so a lot of you might have questions about that. Hopefully we'll be able to answer them all for you today. And then how can you achieve security outcomes with a SIEM? So let's dive into the first section. Why grow your security practice? So the security threat landscape continues to change dramatically. Starting around 2020, during the time with the initial COVID lockdowns, we saw the security perimeter change pretty dramatically. We saw a lot more people working from home, working remotely, both across businesses as well as some of the higher education, even our local K through 12 schools as well. And so with that ever-changing threat landscape, it's much more difficult to be able to protect all of the assets because we don't have that defined security perimeter any longer. So now we need to be able to make do with the tools that we have to be able to safeguard our employees and our assets wherever they may be. And so it's no surprise to see that according to some of the latest surveys in 2024, that more than 52% of organizations have had a recent breach. So if you're anything like me, I've probably gotten at least 8 different things in the mail lately or through my email letting me know that my user information was potentially compromised. So it seems like an ever-present threat, something that's reoccurring quite often these days. More than 2/3 of all security leaders have also experienced an incident that they feel could have been dramatically prevented if they would have been able to have some additional security operations in place. So that's something that we see quite often when I'm working with customers of all sizes. We see that they might have a sophisticated security program, but there's a number of different tools that they leverage. There's complexity there. There's always a need to be able to grow your security, operations team, to be able to expand the tool sets that you have. So there's going to be a learning curve. So we need to be able to make sure that we take those things into account as well. 84% of organizations claim improving efficiency of security operations is in their top 5 priority. We hear a lot about operational efficiencies, being able to lower the mean time to detection and respond are key things that most CISOs have on their top 5 goals for the year. And we're seeing that trend continuously grow over the last couple of years. Even into the next couple of years, it's one of the things that most boards have on their board level directives and the CISO's top 5 big bets as well. 86% of all the respondents in our latest survey say that the current geopolitical climate makes them a bigger attack target. We see things in the newspaper, we hear things on the news quite often, different utility companies coming under attack, from, organizations in different countries around the world. There's always, targets happening in the financial sectors and things like that. So these are kind of things, you have multiple wars going on in the world, there's always going to be, these types of threats that are there. And we need to be able to protect against them and detect them when they happen. So changing organizational needs is something we need to consider as well. So as all of our corporations and organizations evolve, we want to be able to have our security needs evolve as well. So when we look at things like, being able to have more sophisticated security use cases, maybe we had some good solid firewall logs and authentication logs, but we want to really do a deeper dive into things like endpoint or DNS to be able to see things, like malware or ransomware, some of those more pervasive threats that we've been seeing. And then we also want to be able to focus on our security content. There's very specific security content that Splunk offers free of charge from multiple threat research teams inside our organization. And we want you to be able to make sure that you can use those kinds of things so that you can leverage all of our detections that we come up with instead of having to spend a lot of time reinventing those same searches. So let's dive into exploring SIEM. So the first thing you need to do is to make sure that a SIEM is right for you. So if you have an internal SOC, if you have some analysts that are able to do the work, then that is a really good baseline to have. For other companies who don't have the in-house talent or the in-house staff yet, there's plenty of ways to be able to augment that. And we'll talk about that a little bit coming up here as well. But you might be currently struggling with a couple areas of the business, things like, how do you draw specific insights from a large amount of data? Data volumes have been going up significantly over the past decade. Some data sources can even top into 1 terabyte or higher range with some of the large firewalls, some of the large endpoint providers that are out there. So how do you make sense of all of that data as it grows and grows year over year to be able to find those hidden threats within? The other thing a lot of customers initially have some problems with is be able to lack the context when they're seeing a whole bunch of alerts coming into the SOC. How do I know which alerts are tied to one another? You might have had a user or a device with some failed logins. You might be able to see some, failed password attempts across multiple authentication types. But how do I know if that's part of the same incident or if it's, a smaller threat that might be a false positive or something like that? So being able to see that type of level of context is something that our customers are looking for, and that's something a SIEM can really help you with. And then scaling security operations, as you grow your team, as you grow, the size of the area that you have to protect. We all make, acquisitions of other companies. We might be able to grow our employee base, so now our attack surface is a little bit larger. Those are the kinds of things that we need to, deal with. Those kinds of struggles are affecting a lot of customers today, and we're trying to come up with solutions out of the box to be able to make that much easier for them. So some of the goals you might have to be able to choose a SIEM, to see if it is right for your organization, you might want to focus on decreasing volume, and the time spent investigating alerts. That is a real big thing. You might hear things like alert fatigue. As the data gets larger and larger, there's going to be a lot more false positives. There's a lot more alerts that might get sent into the SOC to be able to review. And a lot of the large organizations that I'm working with today have a constant need to be able to expand their team because there's so many alerts coming in. They need to be able to have more operational staff inside the SOC to be able to deal with them. But by using the proper SIEM, you're able to cut down on the number of those alerts and be able to add context and simplify that so that you'll be able to see things that are, very relevant, that are true positives, and be able to cut down a lot of those false positives in your organization. We also want to be able to simplify things like compliance and monitoring to be able to make sure that you're meeting all of your needs, whether it's something like GDPR or SOC compliance, or if you're dealing with something like HIPAA. All of those things can be monitored by using the proper searches, the proper technologies inside of a SIEM in order to make that happen. And then you want to be able to empower contextual alerts to be able to make sure you're catching the alert correctly, be able to catch it early, and be able to have the absolute, data that you need to be able to prove what you're seeing is real and how it's been, aggregated into a similar event. And then also you want to improve your mean time to detect. So the faster you can identify a potential threat or an incident, the faster you can remediate it and get it out of your organization. We have plenty of customers who start off wanting to potentially build their own SIEM versus buy one that's available in the marketplace already. A lot of customers feel that, hey, what if I built my own, then I could really customize it to my needs or to my business needs. And at first, that sounds like a great plan. Even the Splunk platform that many of you are using today, is built with a lot of searches, alerts, reports, dashboards, all of those things out of the box. But there's a lot of frameworks that are not there that are built into our SIEM, like enterprise security, that work right out of the box. And so the custom development time is a lot longer and more unpredictable. And that's just to be able to get the initial product out the door. That doesn't take into account all of the maintenance and updates as the market changes, as there's new features that people want. Those things would need to be developed. So having something like enterprise security that continuously is developed by a large, software development team, bringing you all the latest features year after year, that continues to be able to find all the latest threats and adding in things like AI and machine learning to be able to find some of the more unknown or advanced threats is the way to go. Also, when it comes to having something that's pre-built, it allows you to be able to have a focus on just hiring the analysts and be able to have some kind of support rather than having to have a full staff of engineers and developers and testers to be able to constantly evaluate the product, make changes, and be able to retest it. So there's a lot of cost savings there as well. The other thing we want to look at is the amount of people that you would need. So having just the proper amount of staffing for a SOC or a security team in general, can be, quite large in some of the larger organizations, but having to add in a lot of more assets to be able to do the development, to be able to do the QA, to be able to do the threat research, building out all the searches and things like that is much more difficult, and it takes a lot more time to be able to get it to the same level as a lot of the other vendors that are already on the market like Splunk. The other thing we want to focus on is a SIEM by itself is often not enough. So what you would want is to be able to have the ability to do automation. So not only automate the initial investigation, but be able to automate the remediation of anything that's found inside the environment. So rather than working at human speed and being able to worry about how long does it take us from identifying a threat to closing out that threat, if you're doing it manually, it can take 15, 20, 30 minutes, oftentimes more. But if you're doing it at the speed of a machine and having something like a SOAR product be able to go out and orchestrate that and automate all the response, literally it can do that in seconds. So being able to get that threat dealt with in a couple of seconds, 3-4 seconds, is going to be able to save you a lot of risk to the business as well. So that would be another product you would have to go out and build to kind of complete your security solution. For those of you who might not have, an existing SOC fully staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's quite okay. We have lots of partners that work with our technologies who can do that for you. You can easily outsource a lot of the initial, tier 1 investigations, remediations, things like that, to be able to send you full reporting. So many of our Splunk partners can be able to have eyes on glass, be able to do all of those detections for you. And as you grow over time, you can augment your own staff embedded with the partner, and then eventually be able to manage your own SOC solution in the future once you have the adequate staffing and know how to do it. The other thing you want to rely on is, Splunk professional services, whether it's done by Splunk themselves or also some of our partners, to be able to make sure that your SIEM is stood up correctly, done right the first time. You have adequate coverage across the MITRE ATT&CK framework, all the relevant searches and things that you would need to be able to detect those types of incidents and threats. Our professional services, as well as those of our partners, are there to be able to make that a very easy experience for you. You let us know the type of security use cases you're looking for. We help you get started, and we give you that roadmap for success to be able to continue that in the future as well. So next, we're going to look at achieving security outcomes. So it's really important to be able to see across all of your environments. So today we have very complex environments. If you look back in the early 90s, it was pretty rare to have anything other than maybe a little bit of a small web presence, but most of your technology would be on premises. Today it's a hybrid across multiple cloud providers, some on premises. So it's very difficult to be able to make sure you have adequate coverage against all of your different environments. So with something like Splunk, it can work with multi-cloud, a hybrid cloud, so both on-premises as well as cloud, to make sure that you're able to detect an incident wherever it should occur, whether it's up in the cloud on an application or in a hosting center, or on-premises on anything that you need to be able to protect. Splunk gives you that ability to do so. The other thing you want is to be able to have proper context when you're looking at an alert. We don't want a simple alert saying, hey, this user account has had 10 failed login attempts within a short period of time. It doesn't give us enough context. What were the servers they were attempting to log into? Was it the same username 10 times? Was it 10 different usernames once? Is there any kind of brute force behavior that's been seen? Those kinds of things are really helpful to the analyst team when they're doing their SOC, investigations. And so as much context as we can give, is this a finance server? Is this a workstation that's been impacted? What types of software is running on it? Is there anything proprietary, or is this a high risk server? That kind of context can be done inside of a SIEM to be able to enrich that data and let you know those things. The other thing you want is up to a 90% reduction in the mean time to detect and mean time to respond. So as we mentioned before, you want to be able to get ahead of the problems. You really want to be able to address a problem, detect it early, and be able to get it resolved and out of the environment as fast as possible. Doing that manually can take quite some time, but using the SIEM that'll have the ability to kind of reduce the amount of noise, reduce that alert fatigue so that you can see the true issues at hand, and then kind of draw correlations across them, showing you which ones of those alerts are actually part of the same incident, is something that's very beneficial to all the teams. Last but not least is that unified workflows. You want to be able to collaborate seamlessly. And what do I mean by that? You'll be able to, inside of your SOAR, inside of your SIEM, be able to investigate, do your actual investigation inside of the SIEM, and be able to share that with additional analysts. So you can invite other analysts into your ticket, show them some of the context, do seamless shift handoffs. If it's at the end of one shift and going into the next, they'll be able to see and access all the same notes, all the same detections, all the search history that was done, and not have to be able to reproduce those same things again. They'll be able to pick up right where they left off. All right, so now it's going to be time for a quick demo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to my demo server for you, and we're going to be able to take a look at this very quickly. What I'm going to do is first show you around Splunk, which many of you are already familiar with. So I'm going to hop over here first. And what we're looking at here, this is Splunk Enterprise. So this is what many of you are using today to be able to bring in all of your different security logs, maybe IT and operational logs as well, be able to do manual searches, be able to create dashboards, be able to create reports and alerts. The problem here is that with a SIEM, you can monitor all of your data sources simultaneously and kind of correlate them together. But inside the Splunk Enterprise, oftentimes you're looking at a single data source independently. So here we're looking at failed logon attempts inside the organization. So I have a quick search. I'm looking for anything with a fail, and then I'm doing a statistical count by user and by host, and then doing a negative sort, so the largest down to the smallest, and I'm limiting my results to 10. So what a lot of people will do is they'll start coming in here, they'll go over to this pattern section, they'll build out a nice little chart or a graph kind of showing you who the biggest offenders are, what's going on inside the organization, and then they'll be able to take that output and be able to create that into a specific chart that they'll be able to convert into a dashboard. Now, at first, this seems like an easy win. It's fast time to value. You're able to be able to get the data that you're looking for, to be able to see the nice visualizations rather than staring at the raw numbers. And this is a very easy way to be able to get started in your security program. But once you outgrow this, once you're starting to worry about more complex threats, how do I correlate my authentication to my endpoint logs, to my firewall logs? Then you're going to be able to need to be able to upgrade everything and move over to a SIEM. The data is still there. So whether you're talking about a Splunk SIEM or Splunk Enterprise for data, the raw events are still coming in. All the same data sources are coming in. It's just how is it being processed, how much context we're providing, and then how it kind of correlates everything together. So Splunk is known to be able to take any type of log. So we can see things like a Windows security event log. We can see some additional SSH logs here. We can see some Office 365 logs here. And these are the raw logs that are coming in from Microsoft. We automatically parse these out. So we break these down into key value pairs. You'll see the field names here and the values on this side. We also see those same field names on the left side, and we can quickly pivot and click on them to be able to do an investigation. But this allows us to be able to scroll down and see quick context, like which user was involved, what device was involved, how many failed login attempts were there, all those different things. Now, once you get going, you can start to be able to take some of the searches that you build and build out some better dashboards like this one. So this works for many teams who are just starting off their security program. They leverage a lot of Splunk apps. They use a lot of dashboards and alerts to be able to monitor things. So this is a big upgrade. As you can see here, we have over a dozen different authentication sources, not just Active Directory, but all kinds of things, VPN, Active Directory, LDAP, two-factor authentication, a number of different things across the enterprise. So now we can aggregate all of our authentication solutions across the organization into one common dashboard. And this works for many customers for quite some time until they outgrow this as well. Then they start to want to be able to correlate their authentication logs outside of this with other things. And they also want to be able to reduce the amount of false positives, alert fatigue that's getting sent into the SOC as well. So once you have this done, pivoting over to something like Splunk Enterprise Security, which is our SIEM, brings a whole nother world of potential. So here we can see a security posture dashboard. It's looking across all of our data sources simultaneously. So we can see things like access notables. These are all of our authentication failures. We can see how much it's gone up over the last 24 hours. So we see that about 80% of all of these failed logins have occurred within the last 24 hours. So we can see there's a big spike. It could be something that's IT related. Maybe they've switched over to a new two-factor authentication solution, like Cisco Duo or something like Okta. Maybe they were using, in the federal government, something like a common access card or something along those lines that things aren't working out so well. But it also can be a security alert where someone's trying to do brute force against the organization. We can see things like endpoint notables. So if you're using something like Carbon Black or Tanium, CrowdStrike, we can see that there's some malware outbreaks or rogue processes that are being detected as well. From the networking side, all of your routers, switches, firewalls, things like that can be seamlessly monitored at the same time. And then we can also see things across different identity systems. We can see audit notables, if something's been changed inside the organization, if someone has had privilege escalation on their user accounts, we'll be able to see a lot of those details here. The other thing we're doing is we're breaking down a lot of these detections for your executives, your VPs, your CISOs who want to be able to see the hard numbers of the SOC to be able to track the progress. How many alerts are we having per day now? How many of them are critical? How many are high? How many are low? Notable events, are they coming in pretty steadily? Is there any big spikes that we need to be aware of? Has there been a lot more activity as we get closer to the holidays or to a specific time frame when things often get busier? That tends to be when a lot of these adversaries will strike a business. We can see the top detections and searches that have been firing. So we can see improbable access detected, which means potential compromised accounts being leveraged and used all around the world and other locations other than the ones you would expect that user to be working in. So if someone was New York City based and you start seeing logins from Los Angeles, maybe from Singapore or Australia, things like that would be something that you would want to be able to detect pretty easily. And all of those are built-in searches that work right out of the box with Splunk Enterprise Security. Now, when you have a SIEM like Enterprise Security, you have what's called incident review. And this is where all the investigations take place inside the SIEM. You'll see that there's a number of different alerts. These are called notable events. And these are ones that are been detected and sent up to the SOC for review. Now, we used to just send in any alert. So if there was a search that said, show me all my failed logins, that had at least 5 failed logins within a 15-minute period of time, it could get pretty noisy. You could have a lot of alerts being sent to the SOC without much context. But inside Enterprise Security, we have the ability to do risk-based alerting. So rather than just sending all these useless alerts that lack context, we can actually correlate them together and be able to show all the risk rule increases across them as well. And then be able to aggregate them together so that you see everything that's happened to a user, to a device in its entirety. So it almost plays out like a storybook. So here we have some MITRE ATT&CK tactic thresholds that have been exceeded over the past 7 days. It'll continue to build these out. We can see here all the MITRE ATT&CK tactics across the x-axis, the techniques and sub-techniques that have been witnessed against this user account. And the user is the Theodore at SplunkTshirtCompany.com. I can see all the different risk rules that have been broken. So we see some malicious PowerShell with encoded command. We can see some email abuse for brand abuse. So someone registered a domain name that's very similar to ours, that they're trying to be able to confuse users with some phishing scams. We can see some outbound traffic that's a little bit unusual in volume. So it might be some data exfiltration that we would have to look into as well. We can see things like the user who's involved, the device that's involved. But not only that, we're tying this directly into our SOAR solution as well. So what we can see here was that PowerShell with encoded command is typically encoded with base 64 encoding. And so it's almost like it's encrypted and people wouldn't be able to read it. So what we can do is we had our SOAR automatically grab that base 64 encoded command, decrypt it for us, and then we actually saw an IP address that was double encoded as well, and it took care of decoding that for us. So now we have an IP address that might be able to lead to something like command and controlled assets or something that may be owned by the adversary. And so we would be able to dive into that and be able to take a look at that as well. Down below, we start to be able to see some other things that contributed to it, like IP addresses and different permissions. And what I can do is I can dive into the details a little bit more. So as part of enterprise security, Splunk SIEM, you get a full threat intelligence platform as well to be able to bring in all of your threat intelligence feeds. So we can see things coming in from VirusTotal. We can see things coming in from IBM X-Force. We can see specific artifacts like IP addresses or MD5 hashes of potential malware that are coming in as well. So all of that is built in at no additional cost into enterprise security to give you the most benefit for the money that you spend. We're always focused on giving you increased value year after year, and we often include a lot of additional software at no additional cost. So we do a lot of the threat research. We include all the different threat detections and searches for you at no cost, built right into the use case library. And then, of course, the threat intel platform as well. Now, this one is a text version. I will show you what the graphical version looks like as well. But this is where you get the most value out of a SIEM like enterprise security. We talked about lack of context, the ability to be able to have an alert come in and know, is this alert correlated in any way to this other alert that we saw coming in that mentions the same user or the same asset? If it is, how is it related? If it's not, how do I know it's not related? So if you take a look at some of the details here, what we can see is this almost reads like a storybook. It's all chronological, starting from the earliest time and date stamp on down. We can see login attempts coming in for that Theodore user coming in from places like United Kingdom, Australia, United States, all kinds of things, even Canada here. So we know that there's a good likelihood that this account has been compromised, because we're seeing all kinds of traffic coming in a short period of time from all over the world. And the user couldn't have traveled that great distance within that short period of time. So it's very suspect. The other thing we're doing is we're mapping everything to MITRE ATT&CK. So when it comes to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it's embedded into everything that enterprise security does. We can see how they made initial access into the environment. It's saying it was a spear phishing link through email. There was an actual email address. Instead of Theodore at Splunk T-shirt company, we see a similar domain, but the P and the L in Splunk were reversed. So this is something you probably have seen for your own organizations, where people will clone domains that are just slightly off or using a 1 instead of an L or something like that, that an average user might not pay much attention to. It kind of looks right when they first glance at it. Then we saw after they made landfall into the organization, we saw that there was that malicious PowerShell with encoded command that was executed. Then there was some defense evasion. We see some masquerading techniques. We see things, processes running inside the System32 directory, inside the Windows operating system, things that we shouldn't be seeing. And then we also see a lot of that logon from all over the world. And then we start to be able to see some potential data exfiltration. So those kinds of things are already done for us. By the time we open up the alert, all the heavy lifting is done. The SOAR product has sent us all the output of all the investigation, all the searching. It's already gone out and checked things like IBM X-Force, virus total, pulling in all of those threat intel details so that the analyst just has to simply do a quick review and make a determination. If you want to be able to fully automate this piece, you can as well. But many customers like to have a human in the loop. They want 95% automation. But to be able to have a human double check something to make sure they're not going to be blocking something that could be beneficial to the business. Like, for example, if someone hacked into one of my AWS IP ranges that I have my web servers hosted on, and they start attacking my infrastructure, if I block the IP range, then I'm blocking all of my infrastructure up in AWS potentially, or at least, those servers that are mission critical to me. So what I want to do is have a user be able to identify where it's coming from, let me know right away that, hey, this IP address is inside the range that we actually use and are licensed for. So we need to be able to deal with that asset and not block it on the firewall. So I talked about this being a text version, but we also have that built in here. So if you see this 21, these are the actual risk events. These are the number of things that have occurred that broke a rule that contributed to a higher risk score, which right now is setting at 277, so pretty large. If I click on this, what I'll be able to do is go into a more of a visual indicator that shows you all those same things that have happened inside the organization that contributed to negative risk against a user, against their asset. And I can see those things right down here. So I can see the risk score increased 80 points every time it saw that malicious PowerShell with encoded command being run. It's mapped against the different MITRE attack tactics and techniques. I can see the Windows directory where that PowerShell was launched. If I hover over it, I can see the actual PowerShell command that was used inside our organization. The other thing I can see is the unusual volume of outbound traffic, and I can see the source. I can see the MITRE attack tactics and techniques. I can see the actual IP address of the object that was sending that data. And I can see all these different things that contributed to those risk score changes, all within minutes of each other, 1016, 1031. So within 15 minutes of each other, you're seeing a lot of this stuff happening across the organization, multiple different user attempts. We see different access attempts happening from all over the world, some from the United States, we talked about the United Kingdom. So all of that's accessible. I can then drop down to be able to see some more of the context, and it's automatically mapping it, telling me it's got lateral movement. I can see the remote services that are impacted. And then also at the top, I can go to what's called a threat topology view, and I can see the user, and I can see all of the threat objects that user has been linked to. So I can see the PowerShell with encoded command being used. I can see some hash values that are being there, different IP addresses that were accessed and the number of times they were used. So these things are extremely important, and we can see exactly how the risk score changed and when it happened as well. So that is how having a SIEM like enterprise security brings additional value. It also be able to give you that additional context so that when you're reviewing an alert, it has all the context, not only the actual risk rule that was broken, but all the other related rules, all the other searches that were part of the same incident, all spelled out for you. So you can see how it made the initial impact in the environment, if there's any expansion and lateral movement, if there's any data exfiltration, all those things are there. Now, this would have already been sent up to the SOC for review, but it'll continue adding additional information as it's determined. So if something happens within the last few hours and then nothing happens for another 5 or 8 hours, it will still submit it to the same exact notable event or alert so that you have that context, because you're going to have multiple shift change over the next day. It's easy for people to forget, hey, something happened yesterday that involved this workstation. It could be a different user or different analyst who was working that, and they wouldn't have that context to know that something occurred the day before against the host, and they might write that off. Here, it's going to track all of those separate indicators all the way across from end to end, regardless of how long that incident lasts, even if it lasts days or a week, and you'll be able to see that full context here. We can see all the users that were involved, as well as what workstations were involved, any kind of servers, things like that. So I'm going to hop back over here in this session. And then what we're going to do is I have some time set up here for doing a little bit of Q&A. So inside your console there, you'll see there's a Q&A section. Feel free to post any questions that you might have there, and I'll answer them live for you here as well. It looks like I have a couple waiting for me here. So the first question is, how can I stay up to date on security product releases from Splunk? And so there's a couple ways we can do that. We have the blog and announcements section that's part of the community that you're connected to here. And then there's also a security blog section out on Splunk.com. Should be blogs.splunk.com. And you'll notice that there's monthly contributions that come in from our entire security team, all kinds of great things that talk you through different data sources, different threat types, how to be able to use the included searches to be able to find evidence of that type of behavior inside your organization. So all of that's there for you to be able to work with. You can also subscribe to our blog. So if there's a new one, you'll get an email notification that a new one's launched. You can come in and see that as well. Another question is, do you have any customer stories that I can look at? So we do. Out on our website, you're going to be able to see, as you go out there, there's a Why Splunk drop down. When you click on the Why Splunk, there'll be a section in there called Customer Stories. And inside there, you can sort that by, business type. So is it a financial organization case study that you're looking for? Are you looking something that's maybe in manufacturing or government? All of those things are right there and available to you as well. So I'll give it here a few more minutes and see if anyone has any other questions that they would like to be able to submit for an answer here as well. All right, we have another question. Is there another way of implementing SIEM without Splunk Security Essentials? And if so, what is your experience with that? So Security Essentials is a little bit different than a SIEM for Splunk. It is a collection of security searches, well over 1,000 different searches that are in our current release, all mapped to MITRE ATT&CK, all mapped to be able to give you out of the box use cases with the actual Splunk searches included. And so our SIEM enterprise security, we have the same threat research teams who support us. They take a lot of those similar searches and optimize it for our SIEM, and it comes out in a direct feed into enterprise security. And we have a use case library that gets updated every 1 to 2 weeks when those new searches come out. If you want an app version to be able to look through that's much more graphical, it's called the ES Content Updates, or ESCU, and it's available for free out on our App Store. And our App Store is splunkbase.com. And then you'll be able to download that and install it on your Splunk search head and be able to see that. But the demo we did today at the end is our SIEM called Enterprise Security. It is a premium application. It does have a license cost to it, but your Splunk sales team would be able to help you with that, to be able to see if it's right for you and potentially give you access to doing a trial of it as well. Let's take a look at some of the other questions. Any news for Splunk Cisco XDR integration? So yes, there is some basic integration with Splunk Enterprise Security, our SIEM, as well as Cisco XDR. We announced it when we were out at RSA earlier this year. We actually had a live demo in the Cisco booth to show you that backwards and forward compatibility. So it does exist in that context today. All of the different things that we have, we support all the Cisco security applications coming in and bringing the log data into Splunk. We have some basic integrations that we're going to be showing off next week at Black Hat with Cisco Talos on the back end as well. So you're going to be seeing a lot of fantastic integrations between the Splunk security portfolio and the Cisco security portfolio, as this year continues. So look for some other exciting things. But yes, there is some XDR integration from Cisco with enterprise security. Is there any session happening on how to deploy Splunk to any organization network? So I'm not aware of a tech talk on how to deploy into a specific organization or organization type, like a financial or manufacturing or tech or anything like that. But we do have hundreds of sales engineers as well as security specialists that can help you with that. So what I would recommend is reaching out to your Splunk sales team, having them bring in one of their technical experts, and their sales engineers, solutions architects, to be able to discuss your security needs and also your security use cases, and they'll help you step by step be able to do that. We also have workshops that we do on a monthly basis, and all the technical staff can run them at will as well. Things like enterprise security hands-on workshop that gives everyone their own instance of our SIEM and walks you through all the frameworks, all the threat hunting that it can do step by step. So I would definitely do that. It's 100% free to our customers and prospects, so there's no cost to you. We can do it on site, or we can do it, over a Zoom or any other type of product like that. Lots of good questions coming in. Thank you so much. What training would you recommend for someone new to Splunk and is going to be running Splunk for an organization using Security Essentials? That's a great question. So we have our Splunk fundamental courses called Splunk Fundamentals 1 and Fundamentals 2. Fundamentals 1 is 100% free of cost. And so that is the actual Splunk, education authorized course. And then all the strategists like myself on our team, we've written a bunch of workshops that are free of charge that are very security specific. So for someone who's new to Splunk, I would recommend the Security Lunch and Learn. It teaches you about a little more than a dozen Splunk search commands, all security relevant, all of the great security data sources like firewall logs, web server logs, and it walks you through a 2-hour hands-on workshop where everyone gets their own access to their own server, and you'll be able to learn all those Splunk commands and how to use it in a security lens. So definitely recommend that Security Lunch and Learn as a great starting point. Another question here, is there a site where you can point us to for creating your own security dashboards? Yes. So there is a free application on Splunk's website. We have our app store. It's called splunkbase.com. So Splunk and then BASE.com. Inside there, you'll have an app that's called the Dashboard Studio. And so most dashboards in Splunk are written by Splunk searches. So you'd have to write the Splunk search, make sure the search works, click over to the visualization button, get your dashboard and save that panel. But the Dashboard Studio is much, much easier for someone just getting started. And even if you're a seasoned Splunk expert, Dashboard Studio is fantastic. It's drag and drop. You can drag out your dashboard. You can put in the fields that you were looking for, and it'll build your dashboards literally in minutes. And then you can export them into Splunk and use them there. So definitely look at Dashboard Studio for that. Can you describe mission control for people who are new to Splunk? Absolutely. So mission control might be something that many of you have heard of. What it was designed to do is take our SIEM enterprise security and link it together with our SOAR product, and then also our threat intelligence feeds, all in one common single pane of glass. So rather than having to hop between products, going from a SIEM to a SOAR to a threat intel, viewpoint, or having separate user interfaces, it gives you that one main, single pane of glass where you can do all of your investigation, all of your case management, all of your orchestration and automation in the SOAR platform without having to leave that single interface. Now, the good news is that Mission Control used to be a separate app on our App Store. It was included for free for any of our Splunk Enterprise Security customers, and it still is. But in our upcoming release, our 8.0 release that'll be coming out, it's fully embedded into it. So all of that code from that app is now part of Enterprise Security 8.0. We got to show that off. If you've attended our user conference this year in June, we had a booth demoing all of that to be able to show you what that integration looks like. But Mission Control is fully embedded in Enterprise Security starting in 8.0, which will be out shortly. And it's definitely the way to go to give you that single pane of glass and be able to have world-class case management, the ability to do Splunk search, all the ties in directly into SOAR, all from the Enterprise Security. All right. Can you please post a link for Black Hat next week? So I don't have a link offhand, but what you can do is just go to your favorite search engine of choice, like Bing or Google or whatever, type in Black Hat 2024. It kicks off, the training portions already kicks off this weekend, but the actual event itself with all the classes and the lectures and things like that starts next Tuesday. And it's in Las Vegas, and it's hosted at Mandalay Bay. And so if you're going to be in the Las Vegas area next week, you'll be able to swing on by, potentially get access to the expo hall, where you'll see hundreds of different vendors there showing off all their latest security software. Splunk is a platinum sponsor there, and so you'll be able to see us there. And then our new parent company, Cisco, is also going to be a diamond sponsor there. So they're going to have a massive booth presence as well. And we'll be showing off a live integration between the two companies' products, in both of our booths as well. Let's see what else we have here. What is your biggest insight in the field of security during your career? So a lot of things have changed, as we all know. If you've been in security for even 5 years, you'll see certain things have changed dramatically, like the ability to have things like a good endpoint be able to give you a lot of early detection access to things like malware or ransomware. But certain things have not changed, even in more than a decade. Still to this day, more than 90% of all breaches start with spear phishing. And so if you have a bunch of users and you have email, it only takes one person to click on the wrong link to potentially compromise their workstation. And then it gives an adversary, a leg up inside your organization. So one of the biggest things I would do is focus as much as possible on training the user population and testing them. Sending out things, there's plenty of organizations out there where you can send, phishing type emails that are tests to see who clicks on the links and then put them through some additional training. There's a good company out there like KnowBe4 that does this type of user education. So they have a great education side. They also do phishing testing against the user population to see if they fall for those types of things. You also want to make sure that you have a good way of dealing with phishing emails. So if a user finds something in their inbox that looks suspicious, you want to be able to either have a button or a simple thing they can click to forward that email onto a repository to have the network team be able to investigate it. And Splunk has a great product for that. It's called Splunk Attack Analyzer. Seamlessly does automated investigations, takes the emails, runs through sandboxes, web analysis, doc analysis, does everything for you and gives you an automated outcome on if it's malicious or not. So you don't have to spend a lot of time with the SOC analyst doing these things manually, because oftentimes it can take 20 to 30 minutes or longer to do that investigation. And this can run through that investigation automatically in about 2 minutes and give you that, a much more in-depth analysis on everything it found. So thank you again for those questions. Looks like the last question we have here is, what do you have to say about the people who complain about the complexity of Splunk? So that's a fair question, right? So if you walk into your favorite big box store, like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, oftentimes you walk down these massive aisles and you say, you know what, there's so much stuff in here, I could build a house, right? And for some people, that's great because you're very, good at those kinds of things. You want to remodel your own bathrooms. You want to build out your own basements. But there's a lot of people who want an easy out-of-the-box experience. So what I say to the users who don't want to be able to do sky's the limit, build everything in existence, which Splunk can do, but you have to have the know-how to do it. We invested years, like the last 5 or 6 years, we've built so many incredible products that have that out-of-the-box instant experience for our users. And some of the great apps that are out there, they're free of charge. We have our Splunk Security Essentials. And Security Essentials is on our app store, that's splunkbase.com, free of cost. You can go and download it. And then that'll help you get started with over 1,000 different security searches, fully documented. Even if you knew nothing about Splunk search, the searches are already there. They're optimized. They have, very well thought out security use cases, summaries, and descriptions telling you what types of things it's looking for. It tells you the data sources that you would need to have in order to be able to make the searches work. And there's a simple little button next to it that says search my Splunk environment. And with one click, you can test the search to make sure it works in your environment. And then you can add it to your searches on your search head. Those things, we have an entire threat research team who builds new content every 1 to 2 weeks. And then whenever something big happens, when you see something like, this, CrowdStrike thing that we've all seen last week, or something like SolarWinds attack, we have a threat team inside our organization called Surge, and they actually provide within 24 hours a complete blog post, all of the searches to see if you were impacted, a full analysis of what the problem is, how to know if you've been impacted, how to fix that, if there's a fix available, and then all the Splunk searches you need to be able to identify the threat in your organization. So there's lots of things you can do with Splunk right out of the box to get that instant value, even if you don't know anything about the Splunk search language. So I would definitely encourage people to start with Security Essentials and then also be able to look at our threat research to make things much easier for you. I think we're almost out of time, but I have one last question we can go over. So is the single pane of glass only available in enterprise security? Yes, it is called Mission Control. It used to be a separate app, but as of Enterprise Security 8.0, it'll be fully built into the SIEM itself. And so be on the lookout for that. And that'll allow you to seamlessly link the SIEM, the SOAR product that we have, Splunk SOAR, SOAR Cloud, and then also all of our threat intelligence feeds seamlessly from one single pane of glass. Let me also show you a couple of things to wrap up. So the things we focused on today, we had our threat landscape, and as your organization evolves, your security needs have to evolve as well. And we've covered that pretty in depth, talking about the level of detail needed, to be able to see what types of threats are present in the environment, how to detect them, and how to remediate them as fast as possible. And then we also want to be able to solve more of the challenges by using security use cases, to be able to increase your visibility, whether your data is in cloud, on premises, or a hybrid of both. Those things need to be able to be addressed, and Splunk Enterprise Security can work with that right out of the box. We talked about a guided tour. So in addition to our workshops, you can come into the Splunk website. You'll get a copy of these slides. All these links will be hyperlinked. You can take a guided product tour and demo of enterprise security. And then please go take a look at some of the actual reports coming out from like Gartner and Forrester. Splunk has been in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for over a decade now. We took top spots in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for SIEM again this year. We always take top spots in Forrester, and we're the #1 SIEM globally in market share from the IDC MarketScape report as well. And then if you want to be able to take a look at a Splunk proof of concept, we have that ability. We can set you up a cloud instance very quickly, allow you to onboard your own data in there and be able to test it. We would love you to be able to go out onto community.splunk.com. Inside there, you'll see that there's some office hours that are coming up. On August 7th, you'll have part 1, which is the foundational use cases to be able to get the most out of SIEM. And then on August 21st, you'll have a part 2 for advanced use cases to be able to dive in even deeper to be able to see what you can do with a SIEM as well. We have a free area on our website called Splunk Answers, and it's a knowledge base. Basically, you can post questions there, and all these Splunk experts will give you the actual results that you're looking for. If you need help writing a search, if you need to be able to have someone create a dashboard and you're not quite sure what you're doing wrong, you just post there, and we have a whole bunch of experts and a very seasoned community that'll be able to help you there. And then, of course, we have our discussions, be able to view the Splunk Tech Talk section for security and be able to have discussions about this topic as well as other security topics. And then we have our ideas. And so a lot of the new features that come out for our security products come from customers and prospects like yourselves. So that ideas section allows you to be able to submit a new idea or a feature request for some of our products. And then it gets upvoted and downvoted, much like you might see on something like Reddit. And then it gets the attention of the product managers, and they're able to put those things to work. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure spending this past hour with you. So again, my name is Daniel Christiansen, and thanks again for joining our Tech Talk. Thank you.